it down a little bit so I'm not screaming above everybody else. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of Meet Your Makers. My name is Phil Keeling. I'm a writer and part-time game writer, and the goal here is to meet the writers, designers, artists, and anybody involved with creating those wonderful games that we love to play with Onyx Path so very, very much. And appropriately enough, as I was saying before, my first ever guest on this show is Michele Masala, who was the first person in Onyx Path that I ever worked with directly. So it's a
Yes.
pretty cool way to start, if you ask me.
Oh, yes, we're making a very symbolic meaning beginning here with
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
things.
it's beautiful, really. It's beautiful. It's the only way writers should have it. Well, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody where they might know you from and that sort of thing. Just give us a little round of introduction here.
Okay, as Phil said, I'm Michele Masala. I'm a writer from Italy, and I wanted to start writing for Onyx Path, and that's what I've been lucky enough to do so for the last bunch of years. So you might know I started with Mummy the Curse Second Edition. That was the first core I worked with, where Eddie and sorry, where Matthew and Dixie picked me for to write for, and then I found myself a place, a very beloved place in the They Came From line. I got there from a supplement for They Came From Beyond the Grave, Heroes in a World of Horror, and then Matthew kept hiring me for that, and I sort of found a line that meshed well with me in there. As for other things, I wrote for Werewolf the Apocalypse, the 20th anniversary edition. I wrote for the Apocalyptic Record in said line. I wrote for Scion. I wrote and developed some books. And also, I'm trying to remember what I'm allowed to talk and not allowed to talk about here.
Gotta keep
The NDA is
the
working.
NDA's quiet. Yeah.
Let's make the safe choice and say that I wrote for the Trinity Continuum and developed a couple of books for Ether in there. And I also wrote for Exalted, and I I'll be very mysterious about it, but I'm working on Pugmire too, and I think that's about it, if I'm not mistaken. Oh yes, I'm forgetting one of the big reasons that I'm very happy with my work lately. It's my work on the Word Below. I also wrote a big chunk of the Word Below. So seeing that reach the audience in the crowdfunding this month will be quite cool, and see what they think about that. And other than that, I think it should be it. The various lines should cover me good enough. So
That's
I'm sure that I'm not missing anything. I was forgetting about the word below, but it's the anxiety of the first episode or something. Because
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a pretty big stack of games to have worked on. How many years does that encompass at this point?
I started with Mummy in 2018. It took some time for me to get more work past Mummy,
Mm-hmm.
because you got starting in. I'd never written games before, so getting a rhythm in there took some time. But I think it's quite normal, or if it's not, nobody told me. So I
We're just gonna keep it quiet. We don't have to. We don't have to get into it. It's fine. Uh,
uh, then once I started to write some more, once Matthew started to hire me for some more books, I think that I made a good enough impression to keep getting work from there. And luckily, at least until now, that gained some traction, some momentum, and I'm happy to see it keep going for now.
that's terrific. So, where did you start when it came to role-playing game books and your own games? Where did you? How did you get to the point where you said, "I want to actually write these"?
Actually, it didn't take long for me to wanting to write games. I was 15 when I overed into the because I've always been being a big reader and a big fan of creating things of world building and that sort of stuff. And I have always been a fan of horror. The very first game I tried, there were friends that were talking about playing D&D 3.5, and the first game I got was Call of Duty 20, which was sorta in there when it comes to systems. Uh, right after that, I think like a couple of months later, after looking into things, I discovered the was a natural progression from another fan to discover the World of Darkness.
Hmm.
And I think the very first I got was Wraith back then. So it was a older edition of Wraith, and then Werewolf, and then Vampire arrived, and then I discovered the Chronicles of Darkness that back then were still called the New World of Darkness, which I do love the World of Darkness and the Chronicles alike, but I think that my very own special place is in the Chronicles, so I latched into that for several years, and but just right after I discovered the World of Darkness and the Chronicles, I had discovered Scion, the first edition Scion, and so within the same year of me discovering RPG as a whole, I was starting to write homebrew for Scion, and so it was for me being like 16 that I wanted to write games, and I wanted to write games for the then White Wolf, who then became the Onyx Path. So as mushy as it sounds, I always wanted to write games for Onyx Path, and made effort in that sense for a good decade or even more than that. So yeah, I wanted to get here, and we're here, so that's cool.
There you go. Uh, did you find? I have this theory that most of the writers and developers for tabletop role playing games tend to be the forever DM slash storyteller slash GM, whatever. Were you in a position like that where you were always the one setting up the games, or was it a little more even handed?
Way more often than not,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Especially because I was the one bringing the Scion and World of Darkness to the table back in the day, because the friends didn't have neither the attitude nor the desire to run games at all, and those who always wanted to run D&D. I was the one forcing my players to my friends to become my players and play the games I got.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, look, I know you'll basically play anything that I put in front of you because you don't have to do any of the extra work. So here we're doing this. I
Yeah.
I absolutely know that feeling. You end up being the only person with a rule book and that kind of thing. And it's just read through it. We'll make the character. We'll get there.
Yeah, the idea that every player gets a book, a rule book, it's an old one, but I don't think that doesn't quite work as
Right.
it was always intended.
I I found out a lot of times when we would play, I was with older kids and they would tell me we're playing D&D or we're playing this or we're playing that. But sometimes I don't remember even seeing the rule books, and I wonder if we were even playing those games, or if they weren't just making it up as they went along.
Oh, I think that all of us played through oral tradition rather than actual rules at
Yeah,
some point.
absolutely.
To to some degree, we all still do. I think I do hang around the local gaming store, and they play D&D, and there's rules that I'm quite certain aren't in the book, but that's part of the fun,
Oh
I think.
yeah, yeah. That's why I always wonder about people who complain when there's a new edition or changes have been made and that kind of thing. It's like, well, I don't know what gamers you were playing with, because we were all just kind of making it up as we went along half the time anyway. It's still there.
Uh, I'm pleased to say that I feel that the books have this big virtue that they endure. So if you find an edition that works for you for whatever reason, it might be in tone or mechanics or anything, you can always go back to that if it works for you.
Absolutely. So, what were some of your writing influences outside of role playing games? You said you've got a big taste for horror, obviously.
Well, yes, as you can guess, me starting with Call of Cthulhu came from me being a fan of Lovecraft's writing. And always, I think that when it comes to writing that's not, they came from, I always tap into a lot of Neil Gaiman, and I try to do a bit of Stephen King, and I enjoy some purple prose from Lovecraft or Moorcock still when it fits the place. And rather than writers, also there's a lot of, because I'm a big fan, and I technically studied them at college and wrote some stuff about that. From movies as well. I'm a big fan of movies, which well maps well with the They Came From fact. And so I try to bring some David Lynch into things as
Nice.
well, and that sort of stuff.
I love it. I love it. That's great. So, your first project was Mummy with
Yes.
Onyx Path. What were you what did you do with Mummy? What was your assignment?
I think that with Mummy being a unknown quantity because I was this Italian person out of nowhere, it made sense for me to uh, be assigned with the system chapter, which was more or less a test for me to see, because the system essentially I had to take the system from pre-existing books in the second edition of the Chronicles of Darkness, and wrap them in mummy bandages and clean up things. I didn't have that much creative freedom in there. I think the idea therefore was for me to show I was able to meet a deadline without setting a file on fire
Hmm.
or share NDA covered informations with everyone. So it was mostly that. I also wrote a couple of things about skills across time and a couple of traps for the mummy tombs, but I had a small, humble, yet meaningful assignment in mummy. So
Oh, that's
I
excellent.
didn't get much creative freedom until later, but it's part of being a first step, so it's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it makes sense. They're not going to let you just run away with it right off the bat. You've got to, you know,
I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, of all of the franchises you've worked on so far, what would you say is the one that? Oh no! Oh, for Pete's sake, we're gonna do this again. Hang tight, people. Hang tight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what has happened is Zoom, in its infinite wisdom, has chosen to turn me off like it does. Yeah, there you go. You're on mute, buddy. Yeah.
Zoom said you kicked me out.
Yeah, I kicked. I didn't like what you were saying. I was sick of your sass and
Yeah,
all
I
of that
understand.
nonsense. You've got a really bad attitude and you're tough to
I
work
know.
with. That's what they warned me about you before this. So oh, there we go. Yeah, hanging tight, hanging tight. So, all right. What I was asking before we were so rudely interrupted was what is the what franchise that you've been able to work on so far has been the one that stuck with you the most, that you enjoyed the most?
I think that at this point, my brand, so to say, is very much associated with they came from,
Yeah.
and that's a thing that I'm actually very proud about, and I'm very happy with they came from, and it's a line that gave me a lot of joys, both for the projects themselves, with the co-workers, the opportunities I had with that, because I got to pitch and become pitch projects and become a developer thanks to they came from. So saying that they came from isn't very important for me would be a very dirty lie. I also really love what happened for me with the board below, because I'm a huge dark fantasy fan. Like I consider myself a horror fan first and foremost, but fantasy comes right after, and the crossing point between fantasy and horror is dark fantasy. So I do love dark fantasy. There's lots of my major creative influences are like the Dark Souls series or Bloodborne and the Ring and that sort of stuff. I always say that the turning point between little Michele and the creative things little Michele did and the creative things teenage and beyond Michele did is the Legacy of Kain series.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is dark fantasy. So when Matthew told me we're making a dark fantasy game, and he told me perhaps it was an unwise choice, but we'll see about that. He told me I'm basically giving you a ton of word count, and I trust you to go run amok in there and do cool stuff. So I removed all the power limiters and had lots of fun in there. So that was quite cool. And I don't think I ever said this before, because I like to keep to stay very secretive about stuff until it's right about to come out, unless I'm the developer, in which case I'll hype it up as much as possible. But I also wrote a chapter for At the Gates, which is the other game so far in the Heart Being line, like the word below. And I'm very happy with my work there as well, and with what we created as a whole in there. I think that both the Earthbane games are great, and so thanks to Danielle for having me there in that one. The fantasy of At the Gates is slightly less mine than the dark fantasy of the world below. So I think that the franchises I feel at home the most right now are, without a doubt, They Came From, and then At the World Below.
Well, let's talk about those a little bit. I think They Came From might be one of the I adore that game line too, and a big part of it comes from the fact that I find that it is a really great jumping off point, especially for people who might not be as familiar with tabletop role playing
Yeah,
games,
I think
because
so. Yeah,
the comedy is built. Everybody's played a game, no matter what the system was, where you're with your friends and it devolves into you guys laughing and cracking each other up, and that
and
kind of thing.
they came from wants you to do that.
Exactly.
It doesn't groan at you doing that. It's
Exactly.
part of the point.
It's built
Yes.
in. True story. I actually ran a They Came From Camp Murder Lake game for my bachelor party.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. It's my
Oh, I think you told me back then when we were starting.
yeah, yeah. My brother, who had never done this stuff. In fact, I think there were only two of our guests that had ever played role playing games before, and everybody else had never done it before. And my brother said, "Do you want to play a game like that?" And I said, "That would be cool." And he says, "You'd basically have to run it though." And I was like, "Yep, that sounds great. I'm in." So I think that's the surest
Uh,
sign.
yes, I think that They Came From works very well, no matter the context and the player you have in front of you, as long as you can sell them the premise.
Hmm.
And it's part of the reason because, or rather, why Onyx Path is so hated when we run They Came From at the conventions, because we make a lot of noise, and
Yeah,
people from other rooms or the same room look at us. It happened in Scotland last year. It happened in Birmingham this year. Just people despise They Came From, unless they're the one they playing it,
yeah.
because
Unless they're actually enjoying it. Yeah, yeah.
I always have people that have no idea about what They Came From is, and that when the game is over, they are just sold on the line, which is heartwarming because, like I said, it's. I consider They Came From my second RPG home after the Chronicles of Darkness. and so right now it is my RPG home first and foremost.
Oh yeah.
And I think that I'm very happy because for the it's a line that we always gather more fans, but I'm happy to see people involved in it because I think it deserves plenty more love than it gets. But I'm completely biased about that. For me, people should force all the families to play they came from each night, otherwise they're going to prison, like
I agree.
something like that.
I agree, and not a short amount of time, like a
No,
long,
no, absolutely.
long sentencing. No,
Yeah, we should write a dystopia movie about that.
yeah, exactly. That's the next supplement. That'll be the yeah. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the world below. That one, I think everyone has had their appetite well and whetted with that one, with based on the Ashcan edition,
Yeah.
which is such a great idea. I thought I sat down and read it all in one sitting, and all I did with it, and I went immediately to the computer and wrote up like a pitch for like a monster for it or something. I was like, I want to work on this. I got to be on. This is crazy. It has already such a style to it, a sense of self, and I'd love to hear more
Yeah.
about it from your point of view.
Well, I think that one of the things that I think it was part of the pitch and the ideas Matthew had, but worked very well is as we wrote things and that we all embraced is to make the world below not just a fantasy game in an underground setting, because thanks for past influences and the even the Underdark from D&D
Mm-hmm.
itself, that's something that exists. We wanted to make something different, uh, taking inspirations from the dark fantasy I mentioned, from the Hollow Knight, which is another game I love.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all managed to make a game where the setting has its own identity, which is part of the character as well. And so the characters aren't merely your standard fantasy people underground. There's the way all the parts of their paths, because it's a story path ultra game, so the building blocks of the characters are paths, intertwine, give them a unique identity that fits specifically the world below in a fresh way. And that's the characters. The setting is the same way in the sense that it's also very uh, fresh while not being totally unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
You can get the idea as you step in the world below, but you have so much to discover when you actually get there and see how things actually are. So all the elements, be them the characters, the powers they have, the places they inhabit, or the enemies they fight, it's all part of a very nice tapestry painted with dark fantasy in mind. The same way, and this is a bit of spoiler, but so I'll be very careful about it. The same way At the Gates does it with its JRPG inspirations, and I'll
Okay.
stop there because that's way.
We're all writing down notes, Michaela. We're all okay. JRP. Okay. Uh,
Oh, that's out of the bag. I'm not spilling any.
no, no, no. So, what's a? We've talked about the franchises you've enjoyed so much. Are there any franchises out there that you like to work on, maybe that exists or don't exist? Something that you'd like to, sink your teeth into that you haven't gotten the opportunity to yet?
Oh, I've been very lucky because so far I spent across a lot of things that Onyx Path did, and uh, my love for Trinity came up slower,
Mm-hmm.
but it once I Ether happened, because I'm a fan of Gothic literature, so that sort of stuff meshed well with me. So it was cool to develop for Ether, and then so I started to pay attention really at the Trinity. I had the books and I enjoyed the lines, but Ether really got my attention. Then
Mm-hmm.
Assassin happened, and I'm a huge John Wick fan.
Oh
So,
yeah.
oh, Okay. And then I was very, very lucky to write on Aegis.
Hmm.
And Aegis is, well, to give a quick inspiration of Aegis, it's based on Greek mythology, ancient settings, and I'm a huge mythology fan. So I started writing homebrew for Scion, so that gives the idea. So I embraced Trinity after that, and I've been lucky to work on Trinity for things that really meshed well with me. Scion is just Scion, so it's mythology, and I'm a huge mythology geek. So
Oh yeah.
writing and developing for Scion is just fun because I get to unleash all that stuff. I also wrote for Exalted, for an adventure for one of the supplement for Essence. So I had fun there as well. I was missing Pugmire. I thought I had long wanted to write for Pugmire,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure I can tell on what. But that has been taken care of as well, off of my bucket list as well.
So we just basically brought you on here to brag, is what you're saying.
Oh well,
I've worked on all the
well,
dream projects, Phil. I got nothing. I got.
I'm of the idea that I'm happy as long as I get to keep writing on things.
Yeah.
And mm, looking back to the things I did, it's just a source of joy that I almost always get to return back to and find some happiness and some pride to. So I can only hope to have my contribution expand in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Absolutely.
sure that once I'll get to see perhaps the projects I pitched and developed, like Cyclops' Cave and Witch for the that will unlock another personal milestone within my heart, and we'll see how things are there. Because I have noticed that the finished book gives different stages of each project give different feelings, so to
Hmm.
say. And I still haven't got to the this book I developed is here really in my hands.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Back to the world below. Excuse me. One of the things I keep hearing about it when people describe it, and with Matthew especially describes it, is the sense of exploration
Yes.
and wonder in this world, which I think is huge. Because I agree. You said it yourself when I first read through it, I immediately thought Underdark, and which was always my favorite part of Forgotten Realms and everything like that. And
Well, we did get the honor of having at Greenwood on the world below, so
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
we did tap into a bit of the that's Forgotten Realms goodness from the source, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And but it's great because it doesn't do a one for one. Like you don't.
No,
It's not like here's our version of Beholders and here's our version of
no,
Drought. Nothing like that.
no. I can't speak for Ed, but I don't think he would have wanted to write the Underdark with the serial numbers filed off
No, no,
himself.
no one. I don't. We've already got that. So,
Yes.
but tell me more about the exploration aspect of it, about that because that really appeals to me personally. And this is my show, so we're going to talk about what I like. So,
No, makes sense. Don't worry.
sure.
The way I see it, it's all through that lens of the my dark fantasy inspirations that were majorly the Soulsborne games, Legacy of Kain, and Hollow Knight in there. So I'll get to the point through those. I think that in those games there was always the thing that well, I played Legacy of Kain when I was 10, probably too young to play for that, so probably is the reason why it struck me so hard. But the thing is that when you get to a new area and you get to see the wonder and the dread and the magical world you have in front of you and all the challenges that you ignore, there's always a new thing around the corner and a place that tells its stories just by being itself, not without not with someone telling you the story. It's something you want to see because the the environment and the history of the setting speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we strove to deliver in the world below as well. Uh, Exploration, the world below is a mostly hostile place in
Mm-hmm.
the sense that you have to fight to explore and survive in it. And if you can do it, you can reap huge benefits for you, for your friends, and for your community. But there's always the sense of an adventure, and it's combined with danger, but wonder, and it's I think it's always there at each stage because you're exploring a veritable world below where if you go through an untreaded path, you'll find something different,
Mm-hmm.
and or you'll find someone who went there but failed, or who went there and disappeared. So you always have something to discover, something to explore.
That's great. Now, one of the other things I hear from game designers and game writers and that sort of thing is you spend so much time writing these games, you don't get to play them as often as you would like. So tell me, what are if we were able to just sit down, throw together a game right now? What's a game that you've been dying to get a session in of that you haven't had the chance, maybe?
I have a bunch, and now that you're asking me, I can't think of anyone.
Naturally,
Of
that's
course.
we've got to we're putting you on the spot. Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, I never had the chance to run, for example, Sion 2E myself,
Okay.
which is a game I love, and I would love to do that. And also, I have in mind, perhaps I should ask Travis and Matthew if they agree with that at some point. There's always this idea, which is absolutely true, that they came from is great for one shots,
Mm-hmm.
but I think its potential to do a little longer campaigns hasn't received as much spotlight as it being great for one
Interesting.
shots.
Tell me more about that. How would you run? I'm going to continue keeping you on the spot. How would you run like a longer term campaign with They Came From system?
I think that my idea is perhaps to promote Witchford Academy when its time comes
Mm-hmm.
to do, for example, an year of magical school on the Onyx Path channel with some players in there.
Yeah.
Because we, through all the lines of They Came From, we do offer the tools to go beyond the one shot,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's a pity that sometimes in the perception of the line they go a bit wasted.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be cool to have perhaps a plot line spanning through the school year
Mm-hmm.
and some flashpoints that detail events through year, session through session, until we get to the end, and we'll finish our first book with the end of the year, basically.
Yeah. Oh, I think that it's absolutely built for that kind of thing. I think that's going to be such a that one in particular makes a lot of sense for that sort of thing. But yeah, I find I was thinking the one that I'm always stuck on is Murder Lake because I love the old slashers and everything. And my only thought for that one was like I guess you could do it's kind of a one shot, but then you do the sequel and maybe one or two of the characters who
Yeah,
survived stays through and
I feel the key there to see They Came From as something that can last more than one session,
mm,
and it's something that I bring up often because when I run it at conventions, they always ask me about this. Try to look at it as sequels, or if you, for example, you have in mind They Came From the Cyclops' Cave, there are sequels there as well in all the Sinbad movies, or if you want to think about because the Cyclops' case spans across the whole fantasy genres, save for a magical school, but we take care of that in Witchford.
right.
So you can think about that like the Conan stories, because they were all short stories of little different event that Conan met, or the Conan comics from Marvel work like that. You can have them at as a story that sort of develops across many pieces, but you still have your focus on each session. You just got to embrace the idea that you have a series instead of a single movie for you there.
Yeah.
Whether it's a TV series, a book series, or a movie series.
Absolutely. Okay, now this is where we're going to get a little more into your background stuff here. I've written down a bunch of questions that I like to throw at gamers.
I knew you were going to ask me where I was in Dallas.
Yes, exactly. Where were you at this time? It's the door. You start hearing SWAT team at the door busting down. Yep, finally happened. Tell me about one of your favorite pre-written campaigns or modules or something like that. Did you use a lot of those, or as a writer, did you find that you wrote them yourself more than that?
I have written them from a bunch of adventures for Onyx Path.
Mm-hmm.
But myself, I tend not to use them much from books, because perhaps that's the counterpart thing to being someone that likes to create stuff, which is a power that helps me being a game writer. It's also the thing that, in a sense, blocks me from using pre-written adventures much. Sure. I do read them because it's always... I'm always of the idea that, like being a generalist writer or one that doesn't write games, I have the idea that, like for that, you have to read a lot of things, different things from many different sources, many different genres. It's always good to read many games, not specifically only games that come from the corner of the industry you love, but it's always nice to spread out. I have basically everything on Onyx Path written, so that's a lot of games already. But I also have other games I do read and like as well.
That's awesome.
So I don't read, and I'm sorry to say that I don't use much of pre-written adventure.
Well, that doesn't surprise me much, but I feel, because my gut instinct when I thought of asking questions like that, it was to say, well, they're writers. They're going to write their own things. But on the other hand, I know that there's also a lot to be said for if all you do, especially in your professional life, is write adventures and write systems and that kind of thing, maybe taking it out of your hands and having something already pre-done to run through would be kind of relaxing in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, yes, I have run myself scenarios that I have not written myself. For example, they came from, I have used the scenarios in Beyond the Grave, for example. So that happens. I don't use them often. I think that, for example, thinking about this, the folk horror scenario in Beyond the Grave is really nice. And the other one is inspired by the works of Edgar Allan Poe, so that's also very cool. And other than that, it's I'm not criticizing pre-written adventure. I think they are a very important tool to have for everyone, because they either show you how the game plays, which isn't always clear by the page themselves, and every one of us has different needs and availabilities when it comes to time, creativity. So I think they're an important part of books, and it's great that sort of Onyx Path policy is either to have books dedicated to them or to always have adventures featured in the core books themselves. It's not a thing that all games do, and I feel them missing when they're not. So I'll say that's about adventures. Absolutely,
I totally agree. Especially the ones that you find in the core books. I think, just like you said, it's a great way of reading the book and reading the rules and the classes and all the abilities and all this stuff, and then actually seeing it in action, and that can really clarify some things. I mean, I own the role playing game books I own that I read cover to cover, I would say 70% of them are games I've never even played. So I understand. Yeah,
That's a thing for all of us. I think.
yeah, yeah. That's like, wow, one of these days I'm really going to play this game, but there's a damn good read. Uh, okay, what are some of your non gaming hobbies, if you have any?
Well, I already said that I'm a book and movie nerd, so
Mm-hmm.
that applies. And I talked a lot about my pleasure for video games, so that checks as well. I'm sort of dabbling with the geek aspects of myself a lot. I also, sadly, that part is ending. I also do enjoy swimming a bit,
Okay,
quite a bit,
great.
and I spend my time like that.
Yeah, hey, that's good. It's always good to have more than just games. Believe it or not, I know we don't want to get into controversial territory here. What? All right, this is one that I'm looking forward to hearing the answers on. What's dice? Dice are a really ubiquitous part of
Okay.
gaming. So, but I've also noticed, especially in these days, we seem to be in a kind of a new golden age of role playing games.
Yeah.
What are some mechanics or alternatives to dice maybe that you've seen that have really impressed you, that have kind of inspired you?
Okay. I'm more of a dice person
Oh, me
myself.
too. Yeah.
Even if, well, I have probably a ton of dice still, but I'm not. I can say I'm one of those that feel the need to have a hoard of dice.
Sure.
I know that's not a popular opinion, but
Crazy. Just crazy.
I probably over the years accumulated more dice than I need, but I'm of the idea that if you have a couple of sets that you like, you're good to go. So that makes me an outsider. I know that.
I got you. I got you. Yeah, just a very unpopular kind of opinion. You're
Well,
being very brave on the show.
if you're happy buying yourself some very cool rocks with math on it,
Yeah.
do that. Do whatever makes you happy. Spend your money however you want. And just the idea that I could use the money from dice to get more books and more games.
It's true.
So
Yeah,
that's me.
that's true.
I have seen a few other ways to play, and I think that the most recurring ones I saw it's with cards.
Yeah.
You draw cards, either cards from a sort of standard card deck, or even a tarot deck. I saw that happen in games.
Nice.
There are, of course, some alternatives. There are all the possible ways to have your dice, either if you have different ones or if you have dice pools. That dice pools, by the way, are the superior way of rolling dice.
Uh-huh.
And I'm saying that as an Onyx Path writer, so it's a biased opinion, but that doesn't make that wrong. But you have some really creative things out there when it comes to games. Like you said, I think, and I'm very happy to say that right now it's a cool renaissance for the RPGs in
Oh,
general.
big time. Big time.
So you get a lot of creativity around when it comes to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. You've got the people who are delving more into the numbers, lots and lots of rules, but you've also got the very loose storytelling games and
Yeah.
everything in between. It's wonderful. It's a really cool time to be a gamer. Speaking of that, what is a game that you wish more people knew about? That you wish you saw more people playing or heard more people playing?
For example, I'm quite fond of Ryutama, which
Okay.
is a cute game about sort of JRPG inspired, where you do explore places in a fantasy sense, but you get to not so much to slay monsters, but to see stuff and enjoy the feeling, the vibes of adventures.
Yeah,
So it's an unusual game, but it's a little one I'm very fond of.
that's great. All right, and one last question before we shuffle off here. And possibly the most important question. We'll see. What's your advice for anyone who wants to write for games, design for games, develop games? How would what would you offer them? What advice would you offer them?
Well, my advice there would be to honestly try to own your craft, which entails everything from writing to mechanics to listening to people, talking to people, because that's also part. These games aren't made by a single person, almost in all cases. You're part of a team in there, and that means that you get to work together to create something.
Mhm.
And working together with others is also something that is important to develop in all senses, to be from being well, the basis that it be a decent person,
Yeah,
and then to listen, to propose ideas, and all that sort of stuff. So it's for me, I can say that speaking from experience, it's gonna take time, and because I took more than a decade for me before getting into writing games, but that was part because I'm not an English native speaker. I was always good at English, but there's being good at English, and then it's getting good enough to write in English.
oh yeah, yeah.
It's
That's
not it's not something that happens in a couple of months, so to say.
right.
So uh, honestly, just when it comes to the games themselves, write, tinker with the mechanics, create homebrew from yourself with your whether it's your favorite system. Look at the ideas you like, try to create stuff, and be there working on your things, and interact with the others within the community the most you can. And that's the only advice I think I can give there,
Yeah.
because I think it's that, honestly.
It's very different, isn't it? When because I have a lot of experience writing fiction and that sort of thing, and that, as the stereotype holds, is you can just sit there in your basement hammering out chapter after chapter after chapter, and to be fair, you would have to know enough about people for them to enjoy such a book, but you can theoretically just do it yourself. But yeah, there's a definite curve when you have to write for a game where
Yeah.
you have to have
Well,
people.
yes. If you're a writer, so you have a team with yourself, and then you have a developer that rightfully gets the final saying on things, and will most likely alter stuff here and there to fit the ensemble vision in the end. And either if you are a developer, I had the pleasure of having people tell me that they have been really happy with me as a developer, but that also takes some skill and some humanity to deal with people, because that's part. You have deadlines, you have things to take care of. You got to be professional, but you are also working with people. And whether if you're a writer or developer, these people are people, and they are creatives, and we all tend to be a little bit fucked up in a way or another,
Yeah,
to be sensitive, to have our highs and lows. So you gotta keep that in mind, and balance all the plates that you have there, while also finding your own style of doing things, either as a writer or as a developer. Because in the end, you'll always, past making the first steps, you always uh, take off the edges from what will end up being your own method in things. So that's something.
would you say that's the toughest part about sitting in the developer's chair is just knowing how to interact with all these different people, and is it just like becoming an
Oh,
octopus with so many arms that you've got to.
I wouldn't say so because perhaps I've been lucky, but I never had issues of note with my teams. So yeah, that wasn't difficult
Okay.
for me. It's part of a job that takes energy and time, of course. I think the most difficult part of the development is to take the manuscript when it comes with the final draft and have it look in the end as mm, a single voice that because it must look like a single book while also not losing the voices of its authors of the parts there. So you got to find a balance in there to fit your creative vision, the creative vision of the line, what of course the people above you that trusted you with developing a book want for the book to look like. So and to not negate the passion and the style and the quality of the writers you brought on the project because you trust in them to do well, and so you want for their work to show in the book. So you gotta find a midway point that doesn't deprive anything, but rather than arming its parts, it improves them together as parts of a whole. I think that's the hardest part of the developer job there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It has more to do. It's more similar to making a movie than to writing a book. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. On that note, Michele, would you please tell everybody about what you're working on now? What should we be looking out for? What do you want to plug? Where can we find you, etc.?
Uh, okay, I'm not sure I can talk about what I'm working now
Yeah.
because it's a recent project and all that stuff. Uh, and since a certain evil overlord took over, I'm basically not longer on the platform formerly known as Twitter. I'm
Yes.
there. I'm there, but basically not there.
Yeah.
You
Same.
can find me on the Onyx Path Discord as my name, Michele. You can always, if you write in channels such as they came from Sion and the War Below, I'm usually going to reply quite soon if you are in there. Uh, I'm also on Tumblr with Ghost of Cinder, so it's my tag in there, and I do share some insight about my work in there. I think I saw that at least 10 people on the War Below in the past months in there with some ramblings about that fact. And what I can plug? Well, I can plug the upcoming crowdfunding from the War Below, of course. It's
Oh
going to
yeah.
happen this month, so that's got a lot of good stuff about to show soon. And you can get to Backer Kit and get they came from anthology, which I worked on as well, and there's a couple of chapters of mine. And I'm happy to say that since the art is happening and there's some things going on behind the scenes, Cyclops' Cave, at least the PDF should happen soon. So I'm totally gonna plug for that since I pitched and developed Cyclops is a big baby of mine, and also plug in the other baby of mine, which is they came.
Oh, for Pete's sake! Why do we even have Zoom, guys? Why do we even have it? I just don't know. I don't. I don't even know why we even bother having Zoom. We can't have nice things. Is the point? This is all a mess. Michaela, we can't have nice things. You're on mute, my friend.
Zoom removes my microphone each time I re-enter after it kicks me
That
out.
one wasn't me though. That was Zoom. Zoom hates you. They just
Well, we do hate Zoom as well, so
yes. Well,
it's.
I mean, it's totally understandable. Yeah, you're right at the
I
end.
was
Go
about to
ahead.
say that I'm between the two. I think that Cyclops Escape is still closer to the kind of fantasy I love.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to pick, that's probably my favorite still. But I'm very very proud of what we all did with They Came from Witchford Academy, which you were on to as well. So I
Yes.
think people are so gonna love it once it comes out.
Oh, I think people are going to love it. I agree. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, go out there and get your Harryhausen on and play some They Came from the Cyclops Cave. Definitely worth your time. My name is Phil Keeling. I'm a writer. I've got a book coming out in November. Juice, if you like wine and or horror. Check it out. Follow me on Blue Sky at Phil Makes Monsters. And you can listen to my other show, Pixel Lit, where we talk about video game novelizations. And we are the best podcast that talks about video game novelizations because we are the only podcast that talks about
Still counts.
Yeah, you corner the market and no one can mess with you. It's a beautiful thing. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be doing this every other Saturday. Thank you very much, Michele, for joining me for my first ever episode. This is a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. No, wrong.